The case of Maishem and the other Israeli released hostages has shown the duplicity of Israeli media and has shown the duplicity of Israeli propaganda of weaponizing pom-pom assault in order to validate and support and garner support for the genocide on Palestine as a whole. During the ongoing genocide in Palestine against the Gaza people, what we are seeing is that we are seeing how much pom-pom assault has been waged as one propaganda tool to justify the crimes against the Palestinians. It has been used to justify mass unaliving of their people. It has been used to garner support to continue this genocide and to make it an ongoing thing into 2025. This is 2024, but who knows when it's gonna end, and it's being used for so many other purposes. We have heard of the Teti Dam story, from flying from Yasso to Deso, a story that literally does not have any photographic evidence, and thanks to the people them at Propaganda versus Truth, this story actually goes back to World War I propaganda. And in all of these, what struck out the most to me was the hostages and their switch up, their complete 180 they did when they got released and when they got a little seasoned back into Israeli society. We saw a complete 180. Great example, Maya Shem, bad gal right here. When Homegirl was released, she was saying, everything good, the food, the kindness, the people, the this and that, blah blah. She was singing their praises over and over and over again. But when Homegirl was more, settled into Israeli society and enjoyed her time as little celebrity for the war in Gaza, for the genocide in Gaza, when she went on Israeli media, she switched up her story. Homegirl did a complete 180. She started saying that, she started calling the Palestinians, completely called them all terrorists, and not only that, but she called the Palestinian boy evil because he would refuse to give her candy. She was speaking bad at Palestinian women because they refused to hug her, and then when she spoke about the Palestinian mandem, she was saying that they, can't say the word, but violated me with their eyes. Out of everything, Homegirl had to pick the eyes.
רוצים לנבל את הפה. אבל אין שם אזרח אחד תמים. אין שם, זה לא קיים.
Marishem actively contributes to the genocide on Gaza due to claim of innocence do not exist in Gaza. This claim follows the colonial tactic of collective punishment and collective guilt, where the entire group is punished over the actions of a few. In the case of genocide, the entire population is being punished for what a minority of people have done. Claiming that no one is innocent directly validates the government's onslaught in Gaza and directly devalues the lives of 2 million plus Palestinians in Gaza and renders them as the acceptable to unalive. Mayashem's statement is deeply racist and directly devalues the lives of all Palestinians to the domain of the dead and the acceptable to torture, unalive, and subject to any form of violence by those whose lives are privileged. And in this case, those whose lives are privileged are the Israeli and the Western lives, as the modern nation state of Israel is fundamentally an extension of the West and its hegemonic white supremacy.
If His Majesty the Sultan were to give us Palestine, we could in return undertake to regulate the whole finances of Turkey. We should there form a portion of a rampart of Europe against Asia, an outpost of civilization as opposed to barbarism. We should as a neutral state remain in contact with all Europe, which would have to guarantee our existence.
So at this point, even when they don't touch you, they touch you. And this screams the history of white women weaponizing pom-pom assault to get brown and black men taken out like MJ. If you already know the history from my history lovers out there, Emmett Till, this is exactly what happened to him. There was a white woman named Caroline Brandt who claimed that Emmett Till looked at her inappropriately. And then what happened is that Caroline Brandt's husband and her brother-in-law ended up unaliving this 14-year-old boy, Emmett Till, because of Caroline's lie of this boy looking at her inappropriately. So it's at a point where even just the brown or black man's male gaze is enough to be frightening for the white woman. So much so that even looking at a white woman is now being equivalent to violating her up in the insides. And later in Caroline's life, she retracted what she said and she admitted to lying. But lying isn't about saying that, oh, well, I lied and all that kind of stuff. I was wrong what I did. Isn't going to bring back 14-year-old boy Emmett Till, isn't it? No, it's not going to. And it's funny because what's her name again? Maya Shem, after she was released and enjoying her time as a little celebrity for Israel, she decided to go get a nose job. And when she was getting her nose job, there was a report that was released that a doctor advised her to get a nose job because no man would touch her. Do you not see the contradiction? But anyways, even in the same interview, there were other contradictions that she made, but I digress.
On m'a endormi, et puis je me réveille après l'opération.
Je suis allée directement au bloc opératoire, sans anesthésie, sans rien.
Further, in legitimizing this pom-pom assault propaganda on the genocide on Gaza and Palestine as a whole, false confessions have been used, weaponized, and have been propagandized in order to support these claims of pom-pom assault, of Palestinians being allegedly pom-pom assaulters. There was a great example just like X amount of months ago back where there was a Palestinian prisoner. He was a detainee. In the Israeli prisons, and he was tortured mercilessly, and he was forced to give a false confession of him allegedly violating Israeli women. But if you already know, such a confession like that is not admissible. It's inadmissible. You cannot use confessions that you obtain from torture. So false confessions are being used in order to support the propaganda pom-pom assault in the genocide on Palestine. And this is not Israel's first rodeo with using pom-pom assault against people who they don't like. Not too long ago, May Golan, this Israeli politician, she ended up doing the exact same thing vis-a-vis African refugees and African migrants in Israel. She started calling the African migrants Muslim infiltrators. She calls them
pom-pom attackers.
She calls them murderers. She calls them criminals. She even accuses them of having AIDS and accuses them of even spreading HIV. And this is used many times to support Israel's anti-Africanness and their anti-blackness, and to push to get rid of African migrants out of Israel.
אנחנו גזענים כדי לרצות לשמור על החיים שלנו ועל השפיות שלנו. אז אני גאה בלהיות גזענית. אני גאה בלהיות גזענית. אם אני גזענית בשביל לשמור על החיים שלי, אז אני גאה.
מה אתיופית צריך לעשות? לצאת מהארץ שלנו.
Using pom-pom assault is literally the white supremacist strategy 101 against groups that they do not like. Even in the United States, this has its own history with Jim Crow laws and even the KKK. The KKK would regularly capitalize off of the fears of white people in the United States and would use the myth of the rapacious black man out to violate white virginity, out to violate white purity, and out to get white women. And this was used to not only garner fear and capitalize off of the fear, but was used to also enlist people, get people to sign up in the KKK. It was used to support the Jim Crow laws in the United States, and was used to support and to even get people to join in on cross burnings, to join in on lynchings, and in all of these stuff. What we find is that the group that is being targeted ends up being the victims of exactly everything that they accuse a group of doing onto them. Just like what we see right now, Palestinian women are being violated, Palestinian men are being violated, This use of false testimonies, specifically as a propaganda, was also used in the Iraqi occupation and in the Iraq war on Kuwait. Nayera is a great example. Nayera's false testimony. Nayera, she was the daughter of the ambassador of Kuwait, and what she did is that she issued a false testimony regarding Iraq's alleged war crimes, and she alleged that Iraq was taking babies out of incubators and leaving them on the floor.
R.I.P.
And this was widely cited by G.W. Bush to push for military action against Iraq at the time. Now back to the hostages. If you remember the other hostage, her name was Agam Goldstein. Agam, you know, Salsaville. So Agam, if you already know, she who was the one who famously was talking about that, I arm wrestled with the resistance, and in order for her to arm wrestle with the resistance, she even said that they had to put a towel between her and the resistance because, in her words, they refuse to touch women because to them women are sacred.
כן. את ואני עשינו, ואז אני ניצחתי אותה. ובגלל שהגם כל הזמן עושה כושר, אמרו, רגע, אם חי ניצחה אותה, אז בוא נעשה איתה. ואז אחד מהם, הצעיר, עשה איתי הורדת ידיים, אבל הוא הביא מגבת, כדי לא... כי אסור לו לגעת בי.
אישה היא מאוד... אישה היא קדושה שם.
אישה היא מלכה.
And this is funny because that was on December 22nd. Goldstein, Agam, homegirl, started to change her story. On January 7th, she was saying that many women were, violated as said in Gaza. And then on January 13th, she was saying that your body is his body. And then she went on her own like a press tour, doing her own like 1-2 thing about framing Palestinians as pom-pom assaulters. She essentially contradicts herself. What's funny is this, that either you're lying now and telling the truth back then, or you were telling the truth back then and you're lying now. It's also very interesting giving the other Israeli hostage who was released, I forgot her name. What was her name? The recent released hostage, Noah Argamani, has even clarified on her Instagram story after her words got taken out of context that she was not beaten and her hair was not cut by the resistance. Unfortunately, the Hasbara trolls have been spreading a lot of misinformation in taking some of Noah's words out of context to claim that the resistance allegedly beat her and cut her hair. Noah had to clarify that she was not beaten and in fact she was injured by the collapse of the building on her person. Which I must say that this is very incredible, especially given that she is a released hostage and she is sticking by what she said initially, and she's not switching anything up. And I have to say it's really, really good that she's even pushing back against the Israeli media, pushing her to comply to the state's wishes of how they want her to distort her story for the objective of the genocide going on. I have a feeling that once she probably gets seasoned back to Israeli society, you might just see a quick 1-2 thing, like a big switch up. And we may be wondering why these people are switching up their stories. As you know, your boy Brahim, il est sur les réseaux. Je suis sur les réseaux, so I'm up to date with things. Not really, but you don't know. So there was this brother of one of the released hostages, Abram Sharaj. He is the brother of the released hostage Bella, and Abram, he ended up in the comment section spilling everything. So he ended up spilling the details, So he wrote that the IDF kidnapped his sister for 3 weeks because him and his sisters were on the side of the resistance. His sister refused to call the resistance terrorists, and she said that they're not terrorists, they are well behaved. And he also went on to write that some of the released hostages, they are being threatened along with their families. They are being threatened for speaking favorably of the resistance. Now, if you were to ask me, we're going to put like a 1-2 thing together. What we clearly see is that between the released hostages, and the IDF what go on with it, what I'm starting to really think is that the IDF, going off of what Abram wrote and spilled regarding his own sister being kidnapped by the IDF for speaking favorably of the hostages, is that they're probably more likely forced or being highly pressured to change their stories in order to reflect the will of the state, what the state wants. I also need to add that Abram also wrote that the released hostages are being pressured by the IDF. Like, I'll put it in there. Y'all can pause and read. So we gotta remain extra vigilant, and we gotta remain extra careful regarding Wagwan and regarding what we see, regarding what we're consuming, because it's very, very evident that everything is being used to justify this genocide happening against Gaza. And this happens with a lot of people, unfortunately, who are victims of genocide. This weaponization of pom-pom assault. And we need to stop the propaganda of weaponized pom-pom assaults, because there are many people who do get violated in very disgusting ways. And the more we do not call out people who weaponize these stuff to justify genocides, and people who straight up lie, the people who are actual real victims, the people who are real victims of these things will not be believed in the future. Please make sure to spread this video around, like, subscribe, share, even follow me on IG at Belbrahim. You don't know the thing, you don't know. Until next time, à la prochaine. Peace.